Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm very proud to be back here this year. I'm amazed that they let me come back and host the event again after my event last year, where we tried to push the investors as far as we could and take it from an entrepreneur's point of view. So I'm very glad to see so many of you joining us here today, almost 100 people on the line so far. It's going to be an interesting event. I think this year, more than any, this event is absolutely critical to all of the entrepreneurs out there looking to raise money. Whether you're selling or raising money, I know that this year has been particularly difficult to sit here like I am now, speaking to everybody on mute, trying to present your business, trying to present your point of view, and sitting in that weird wall of silence as you can't quite work out whether people are interested, excited, ready to come on board, or are busy making a cup of tea and completely. So today really is a chance to turn that on its head and put the investors in the hot seat, allow them to call and give them the chance to try and impress you. Last year was great fun. We had, I think, 12 investors pitch last year. They're here to pitch about their investment fund, what they're looking for in businesses, and what they can bring to the table for your business, because that's just what's so critical to raising investment. This is almost nothing to do about money. This is all about how are you going to build a partnership with investors and how are they going to help you drive your business forwards. And this is the platform to do that. Anna, I'd like to invite you to say a few words from the Academy, and then I'll jump in.
Super, thank you very much. Apologies, technical glitch. I couldn't get my camera to work. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Anna Avliani. I head up the Enterprise Hub at the Royal Academy of Engineering, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our annual reverse pitching event, which this year, for obvious reasons, has gone virtual. I'm going to talk very briefly about the Academy and the Enterprise Hub, and I will then hand over to Josh, back to Josh, your host for the afternoon. So the Royal Academy of Engineering, we are a charity, a national academy and a fellowship. We deliver public benefit from engineering excellence and technology innovation. We provide progressive leadership for engineering and technology and independent expert advice to government in the UK and beyond. We bring together an exceptional community of leading business people, entrepreneurs, innovators, and academics from every part of engineering and technology. Our vision is to put engineering in the service of society, and our charitable mission is to deliver public benefit through engineering excellence and technology innovation. We have outstanding convening power nationally and internationally. We understand how to make systems and innovations make a positive difference to society, and we are trusted for our independence and professional excellence. The goal of the Academy is very simple. We are here to harness the power of engineering to build a sustainable society and an inclusive economy that works for everyone. At the Enterprise Hub, we work to increase the number and quality of high-growth engineering and technology companies that solve some of society's most pressing challenges. We foster a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship, and we support creation of jobs and economic growth. We run 3 programs for entrepreneurial engineers at different career stages. Each one offers equity-free funding and extended program of mentorship and coaching, and a lifetime support through connections to an exceptional community of engineers and innovators. At the Hub, we focus on supporting individuals and we foster their potential in the long term, taking nothing in return. This sets us apart from the usual accelerator model. So the Enterprise Hub programs last between 6 and 12 months, and all of our programs give entrepreneurs lifelong access to a brilliant community of mentors and alumni. Our goal is to encourage creativity and innovation in engineering for the benefit of all. By fostering lasting, exceptional connections between talent and expertise, we aim to create a virtuous circle of innovation that can deliver on this ambition. The Enterprise Hub was founded in April 2013, some 7 years ago now, and since then we have supported over 200 researchers, research graduates, and scale-up business leaders to start up, scale-up businesses that can give practical application to their innovations. We have awarded over 4 million in grant funding, and our Hub members have gone on to raise over £150 million in additional funding. The Enterprise Hub is all about making exceptional connections, and it is with this in mind that we host our annual reverse pitching event, inviting investors and funding providers we work with to pitch their offers to you. We have a great group of people presenting to you here today. I hope you find the event helpful and manage to ask questions, but more importantly, I hope you manage to get answers to some of your questions and connect with the presenters. Thank you for your time, and I'm now going to hand you over back to Josh, who is your host for the afternoon. Josh is an engineer, an entrepreneur, investor, and of course a great friend of the Enterprise Hub. Thank you, and over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Anna. Thank you. Firstly, I would like to say thank you for having us involved in this organisation. I think for RPD, it's been a massive help. I've been running this business for 10 years now, and the support we've seen for the Royal Academy has been massive. Whether that's introducing us to clients, helping us have access to potential customers and partnerships, or connecting us with investors. So this event really is a big part of what the Hub can be doing for businesses around the world. I guess I'll introduce a little bit about myself and the business that I run and my involvement in running businesses and investment. And then what I really want to do is get down to the details of bringing people on board to come and pitch you as investors. So I founded RPD about 10 years ago. I first got into engineering through Robot Wars. I'm sure some people still remember the TV show on BBC, Robot Wars. I got involved in that when I was about 10 years old, turning up, making things out of Lego and masking tape and anything I could find at home, and slowly learning the engineering behind that, learning how to design in CAD, learning how to do the maths that went behind robotics, until the point where I couldn't do that anymore, and I ended up going around to factories in the UK, and I'd turn up with £5, £6 that I'd made in a paper round and a piece of aluminium and say, right, can you make this for me? And people would laugh at me. It was just, by that point I was maybe 11 or 12. And they all had this running joke, why don't we go to China, send you off to China, you can go and produce everything you want out there. But this was long before China was really using Google and marketing on the internet in the same way that we do now. And so the only people you found by searching Chinese factory were people who had taken facilities from the UK, from Europe, from America, out to China to set up new production opportunities. So I could speak in English and transfer in PayPal, and I was moving my student savings account out to China and making all sorts of crazy, interesting things. And that sort of escalated very quickly, and I ended up in a position where I was going to all of these robotics events around the world with more and more crazy designs, designing enormous pneumatic systems and everything I could with 5-axis machining and 3D printing long before it was a commercial thing to have access to. And that soon very quickly became working with larger businesses around their supply chain and how do they produce things in China and how do they scale up new products. And that's what became RPD. So one of the things that businesses are very good at is the creation of ideas, working with agencies and entrepreneurs to come up with concepts. And they're very good at running massive supply chains. But where businesses really struggle is the execution of new ideas. How do you bring an idea from a concept or a prototype into market? Those first engineering steps, the certification, regulatory compliance, setting up supply chains to launch 1,000, 10,000, maybe 100,000 units into market and truly validate what's there. So RPD now is a business that supports the largest names in the industry, but also some of the smallest businesses. We work with Unilever at the same time as working with 1, 2, 3-person startups, launching absolutely everything. I mean, we work on medical devices and diagnostic microscopes through to deodorant cans and shampoo bottles, through to sex toys and all sorts of strange products. But the common part for all of that is we're very much experts at getting new products into market. This is a business that's raised investment. I've been through that journey. I first raised investment when I was about 17. My first investment was hopefully not going to be your experience of raising investment. My first investment, I was receiving emails from random people off the internet saying, I like what you're doing, this is interesting, come and see me. And there was one guy, for no reason other than I fancied a trip to Spain. A man sent me an email saying, I like what you're doing, I'm based in Spain, why don't you come out? It never occurred to me at 17 years old that that man didn't have a surname in his email address, didn't have any kind of domain that I could track, and I had no due diligence on the man. I received that on a Sunday. On Monday, I landed in Spain, went to a hotel in a town that had been absolutely decimated by the financial crisis in Spain at the time, and I stayed in a Marriott hotel on my own. They served a buffet breakfast on my table because I was the only person staying in the entire hotel. And I quickly started to realize that this might have been a terrible idea. So I said to myself, well, if he turns up in a Lamborghini, that must be what investors drive. We're all good. This is a good deal and something that might result in some investment in the business. Anything else and I run. He turns up in a beaten up car, and it's covered in rubbish, and jumps out, and I absolutely froze. And we drove for hours and hours because there were no restaurants open. We drove along the coast, all along Spain, trying to find somewhere to sit down and have a coffee. And after about, probably an hour and a half of driving, we sat down. He wrote a check, handed it over, and said, right, now tell me what you do. And as unorthodox as that was, that is now one of my greatest investors. And the reason for that is nothing to do with money. The reason for that is the amount of value that those people bring. All of our investors are people who can bring either customers or contacts or experience to the table. And it's something so critical in doing this. It's very much not about money. Even this year, in such difficult circumstances, I've seen huge checks being written to businesses that are questionable, I'd say. It's certainly not about money, but finding investors who can truly help and be part of your business and take you to the next level is what's so critical. So I really love this event. It's a great opportunity for those investors to be put in the hot seat on the other side of the Zoom call to tell you more about them and what they can offer to your business, and find yourself someone who can really be a partner for what you're trying to achieve. So that's enough about me. Let's get started. I've got 6 people in this first tranche of investors to come and pitch you. Each investor will have 3 minutes to present their ideas, what they're bringing to the table, what their investment company is about, and what they can offer you and what they're looking for. At the end of those 6 presentations, we'll have a Q&A session. You'll have the chance to make any questions that you want. There is a Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. If you click there, you can submit questions throughout that we'll then try and trawl through at the end of these 6 presentations. I will also invite anybody who would like to raise their hand. There is a function to do that within your screen where you can click raise your hand at the end when we join the Q&A session, and we'll invite you to be unmuted and put your questions to the investors directly. Following that, we'll have a break, and then we have a further 7 presentations from some more investors and another Q&A session. I hope you can join us for the afternoon. Let's get ahead. Let's get started. So our first investor this afternoon is Damien Lane from episode 1. So Damien, please go ahead.
Hi everyone, thanks Josh. So I'm Damien, I'm one of the founders of episode 1. We're a UK-based seed investor, so we do checks of sort of between 250 and £2 million into founders living, working, starting their businesses in the UK. And we have sort of two investment theses. One is deep tech, so stuff like edge computing, 5G, we're about to do something into quantum. I don't do any of that stuff because I barely understand it. I focus much more on the marketplaces, so B2B marketplaces. So we're invested in a business called CarWow. Just closed closed an investment in a reinsurance marketplace. And really the only thing that is a no-no is we don't do hardware. And what are we looking for? So we're looking to repeat previous successes that the investment teams have had. Episode 1 with Shazam, businesses like Zoopla. So we're looking for huge outcomes to the extent that in a 25, we probably have 25 companies in a fund, and we're happy would be the wrong word, but we're expecting 2 or 3 of those to provide all of the returns to our investors, and all the rest of them will either return the original investment or even maybe lose money. So we really are interested in moonshot, really big outcomes. And in terms of the way that we interact with entrepreneurs, so my motto is to say yes fast and to say no faster. So I try and end all of my meetings, if it's going to be a no, to say no in the meeting face to face, and then give recommendations to entrepreneurs as to who they should focus on. Are they raising too much money? Should they speak to other investors? Should they in fact speak to VCs at the stage they're at? And really I try and treat that first meeting like a board meeting. So as if I were already on the board of the company. So giving advice, maybe giving a couple of recommendations in the network that we have for people who might be more interested in a particular opportunity than we are. Can I have the next slide, please? So what we're really after, the Holy Grail is at the stage that we're investing in, which is quite often pre-revenue. We're really looking at the founding team. So do they really know, do they really understand the problem? You know, do you really understand the problem that you're trying to solve for? Are you really passionate about it? So I'm as interested in why this particular problem is the one that you're trying to solve as opposed to all the other problems in the world. And that's important because you really have to stick it. So it's really tough. And really, I'm looking for founders who don't need help but want it. My big tip for everybody pitching up for the next slide, please, is just to remember that the objective of the first meeting is to get a second meeting, and you really should focus on the solution that you're providing, not the problem you're attacking. I probably will understand the problem. It's really, do I think that the solution that you're proposing is going to work? And I'm really interested in you. So it's amazing how often people get to the end of the presentation and haven't spoken about themselves or the team. So please tell me about you. Look forward to hearing from you, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Damien. I'd now like to invite Ronnie Sard from Stanford Angels to make their presentation.
Hi, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Ronnie Sard. Apologize for the background noise. I have a baby in the other room, so thank you for being patient with us here. I am co-founder and president of the Stanford Angels of the UK. The background of the group is it's an officially sanctioned group by the Stanford Alumni Association. And we are a collection of Stanford alumni who are investors, entrepreneurs, executives who are active in angel investing. We have groups across the world, in the US, East Coast, West Coast, in India, and the UK, which also covers the EU. Our group is mostly UK based individual investors, but also include some from the EU and the US. We've only been in operation for about 2 years now in the UK, maybe slightly more. We've had around 15 investments. Typical sizes depend on how many of the group are interested in actually investing. So effectively, you could have a group of investors syndicating several 100,000. We could be leading the round, but we could also come in with 1 or 2. So I liked what Josh said about the value that is brought by the investor into the investment. We focus a lot on that, actually. So as part of the process of getting to know the investment and making the decision, there's a lot of discussion within the group and between the group or the individuals in the group and the founders on what things we could help out with based on our expertise, also given our connections, and of course, coming in with capital. So our mission is to help enrich the ecosystem, the entrepreneurship ecosystem, with these 3 things. With capital, of course, but also with expertise and connections that we have. Just a little bit on the tactics of how things are done. We hold 4 to 5 times a year pitch sessions, and before those pitch sessions, we take in candidates who are referred to us into a process whereby our selection committee reviews and chooses 3 to invite to pitch. We are happy to get referrals from anyone in our network, and you can also reach out to me directly. But we've had referrals from the Royal Academy of Engineering, we've had referrals from Episode 1 and others in the space as well. And we're very happy to consider them, and very happy to co-invest with other investors, obviously. The stage and sectors is not a focus per se. It's more of it's more of a diverse set of individuals that decide on an individual basis what to invest in. So we don't have any specific focus areas. I'm getting a message saying that I'm out of time. If you have any other questions for me, we can answer them later on in the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Rani. Next up this afternoon, we have Namratha Kothapalli, who will be talking to us from Speed Invest.
Hello, thanks for having me. I hope you can hear and see me okay. To give a brief pitch about Speed Invest, we're a pan-European seed stage fund, so investing across Europe, including the UK, I guess for some time after. Next slide, please. So we, sorry, the previous one. We're a pan-European seed stage fund. What sort of differentiates us outside of deploying capital is that we are a platform VC on one side. We have a team of 20-25 people internally that help our portfolio companies with anything from go-to-market strategies, marketing, sales, business development, corp dev, M&A, things of that nature. And then we also have a team in the US that supports our European companies to expand and scale into the US. This could be very tactical, sort of like how do you move into the US, for example, or could be very strategic as well. So like when is the best time for you to sort of scale into the US, or how do you test your value proposition to specific customers in the US market and things of that sort. And in terms of like ticket size, we are a seed stage fund, so investing $500,000 to $1.5 million. We just raised our new fund for $190 million, so very early days of the fund cycle, actively looking to deploy as well. We are a generalist fund, so we invest in everything from consumer to deep tech to marketplaces to fintech, and everything that exists along the spectrum. But internally, we have sector-focused teams. So we have teams that exclusively look at specific topics. For example, my team and I, we only look at enterprise tech and deep tech. There are others that exclusively focus on consumer tech. Next slide, please. I thought this would be somewhat slightly useful for this audience. We have a small pre-seed mandate as well, in which case we do ticket sizes of 200 to 300K euros or pounds. Next slide, please. This is the operational support that I mentioned earlier. So we are able to help our portfolio companies with HR, growth, business development, corp dev, sort of have a community and a learning session as well. So our founders can sort of connect with each other, learn from each other and things of that nature. Next slide, please. I guess I probably don't need to go over all of this, but yeah, these are some of our portfolio companies. Probably some names are familiar to you, like Curve is based in the UK, Tier also in the UK, VFox is from Germany, Bitmoven is an Austrian company that moved to the US. I think that's probably all I had actually. So yeah, thanks a lot. Happy to answer any questions, and feel free to apply. We are always looking for founders outside of our network. So yeah, looking forward to chatting after. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Namratha. Up next, we have Emmy Nicol from Cambridge Angels. Emmy, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi. I hope I'm audible. Thank you. And hello, everyone. My name is Emmy. I have the great privilege of running the Cambridge Angels group. Thank you very much. A little bit, just to give you a context, I have structured this presentation as if it was a pitch. So a little tip for you if you are pitching to Cambridge Angels, this is more or less how we would like to see your pitch. Next slide, please. So we are an angel investment group founded in 2001, so there's quite a long pedigree, a group of around 60 high net worth individuals, all individual investors. They are successful entrepreneurs in themselves, looking at technology, internet, software, hardware, tool technologies, and the healthcare industry, which has obviously become quite topical recently. We invest in quality startups, mostly in Cambridge and London, and our members have been responsible for much of the success stories you hear around Cambridge, including the likes of Abcam, Raspberry Pi, even ARM, which has been in the news quite recently. Next slide, please. So our team, this is, I like that Damien pointed out that the team should come right up at the front. So this is our team. We were founded by Robert Sansom and David Cleveley back in 2001, currently chaired by Simon Thorpe, previously by serial investor Peter Cowley. Most of our members are based in Cambridge, predictably, but we do have a large presence in London and a few in some other regions of the world. And we're quite proud of the fact that around 3/4 of our members are exited entrepreneurs themselves. So that means they have built and sold their own businesses and they understand the journeys that entrepreneurs are walking. Next slide, please. So our target customers, the people that we are looking for, brilliant teams. We're definitely looking for excellent founders, differentiated tech. So that can come under the heading of deep tech, but really the point there is that it must be defensible tech, almost always B2B. We don't really look at B2C very often. Average check size, somewhere between 50 to 500K. That can push well up to $1 million, but it just depends whether we're leading or following on a round. We're looking for early stage companies with significant growth potential, so large markets. EIS and SEIS is great. It's not the be all and end all, but it is appealing to angel investors in general. Next slide, please. So our market size, if we're talking that kind of language, in 2019, for example, we invested as a group just over £53 million. That's both new and follow-on. So our angels really do have patient capital, and it includes our corporate members. So we, along with our individual angels, have 5 corporate members, in other words, VCs that help us to follow on. Next slide, please. We collaborate, we don't necessarily compete. All that means is we play well with others and we co-invest readily. Next slide, please. We consider ourselves to be unique because our angels have walked that journey, and we take a really hands-on approach, and we have incredible networks, broad range of expertise across those sectors that you could see. And next slide, I think that finishes me up. Thank you. Our ask to you is do tell us about your business. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Emmy. Up next, our 5th investor will be Oliver Sexton from the UK Innovation and Science Seed Fund.
Hello, I hope you can see me and hear me. I'm Oliver from a fund called UK I2S. So the UK Innovation and Science Seed Fund, we used to be called Rainbow, so some of you may come across it. So what do we do? So we are a patient capital fund, which means that we can invest as long as it takes, right from foundation, so pre-seed is going to really change the world, but it could be the back of an envelope kind of idea at the moment. Next slide, please. I hope you can see that. It looks a bit small on my screen. So really, I've just given a bit back on what we do. So we engage early with teams. We look at a whole range of technologies. What's of interest to us is anything that's complex, deep science. So we like chemistry, physics, biology, ideas. We don't tend to do pure software-based ideas. We don't do B2C stuff. We don't do SaaS stuff. So a range of companies in our portfolio, we would have gene therapy, we'd have fusion energy, we would have infrastructure, pump-based companies. And in all cases, they are kind of brought together by 2 common needs. They've got early stage ideas that have got robust IP. They're going to take a bit of time to get to market, but are going to change the world when they eventually get to market. Next slide, please. Oh, I think you might have to press again. It's animated. Oh, no, so go back a bit. There's a bit missing. I was just trying to point out where we invest. There's supposed to be a line there that shows some nice growth. So really, we can put up to about 200K, 250K in at foundation, and then we follow over time. So we have no upper limit, but naturally our engagement tends to drop away post Series A. And the point there that's relevant is lots of these companies, early companies that we work with, they often go through a couple of iterations at the beginning, and we're happy to stick with people like that. We know that technology is risky, we know it takes time to develop. Next slide, please. These are some of the risks we understand. So really, the point of us as a fund is to do 2 things. So we put the cash into the company, and then we help build the company. So we're happy with companies that haven't got a complete team. We quite often invest in an academic founder, and we help find the management team around them. We're very happy with technology development risk. I mean, one of our most successful companies was a scientist that came to us with 0 data, just a really interesting concept for a drug. And we put the money in there to get from foundation through to some decent results in vivo, and then we have an exit. We work way before revenue, so we're interested in companies that, go back a slide. We work way before revenue. We don't have to see revenue in any immediate time frame. And we're happy with technology that has yet to find a route to market. So we've backed platform companies, we've backed product-based companies. The unifying idea again is when they get to market, a lot of people are going to need it. And we also can invest in lots of different methods. So if you've got incomplete funding, we can do convertible loan notes, we can do royalty-based investments, we can do equity-based investments. We syndicate across the UK, and we lead probably 80 to 90% of the deals that we've invested in. So that's a brief summary. I think that's the last slide. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Oliver. And finally, in this cohort of investors is Mike Madden from DASA.
Hello.
Oh, Mike. There we go.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, loud and clear, Mike. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Okay, hello, I'm Mike Madden. I'm delighted to join you on this reverse pitch event. This is a first for me. I'm an innovation partner, which is a bit like an innovation scout for the Defence and Security Accelerator, or DASA, and we are part of government. And I'm the innovation partner for the southwest of England, and I'm one of 12 such partners across the country. We've been recruited from a variety of sectors, whether it's private, defence, security, industry, business, research and academia. And our role is to work with innovators and guide them into the defence and security sectors. And we have access to business mentoring and finance, as well as customer outreach teams. The Defence and Security Accelerator is here to find and fund exploitable innovation for the benefit of defence and security. And we also contribute to national prosperity. And we fund people with a good idea. Our role is to support early to mid-stage innovation, to create opportunities and choices for defence and security to develop and eventually procure disruptive capabilities. Some of our attributes and offerings are shown on my slide. So who should be interested? Well, anyone with a good idea, whether you're a university researcher, a pre-revenue startup, sole trader, micro or small to medium enterprise, even international suppliers, you can work with DASA. Our simple and accessible processes mean you don't need massive business development teams in order to work with us, so the barriers to entry are very low. You can work with DASA. And what do we support? Well, we're interested in any ideas, really. You know, you might have an idea based on emerging science and technology. You may have a new way of working that has never been tried in defence and security. You may have a technology from another sector that could be useful in a novel way to defence or security. We're interested in all of these ideas, science, technology, services, and at any level of maturity, really. So you can work with DASA. We provide a competition framework for all of our funding applications, and all proposals are judged by subject matter experts from across defence and security customers in government and the S&T community within government. And we have very simple assessment criteria which look at desirability, which is basically the innovation's fit to the customer challenge, feasibility, which is all about the technical credibility, and viability, which is all about commercialization and exploitation. So if you're not sure whether your ideas are fit, then please do get in touch with us. We are the Defence and Security Accelerator. You can find us on gov.uk through a simple search. And when you do get in touch with us, you'll be put in touch with one of my colleagues, an innovation partner, who will be delighted to guide you through our processes and provide you some access to our internal business mentoring and potentially access to customers and partners for your innovation. So we are the Defence and Security Accelerator, and we want you to come and work for us. And that's my pitch. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mike. Thank you to all of our investors. We've now got a chance for Q&A. So there's two ways to submit your questions. Firstly, at the bottom right of your screen is a Q&A button. Feel free to put in your questions there in writing. Alternatively, I can also, I believe, allow you to talk directly. And the best way to do that is to open the participants section on the bottom left of your screen and raise your hand, and I'll announce people and they will be unmuted to bring forward their questions. So while people put those questions through, I'd like to pose a question to the panel. And that question is, what questions are you looking for from investors? When people come and talk to you and they make presentations and you give them an opportunity to ask you questions, what are the questions that stand out to you that make you think this is somebody I'm interested in and I want to work with?
Can I answer that? So I think, Josh, what you mean is what may a company seeking investment ask us as an investor that makes us feel excited? Is that what you mean? The kind of question we like to hear?
Yeah. When you get to the end of a pitch and you say, right, have you got any questions for us from your founders? And what are those questions that stand out as the people that really end up working well for you?
So, I mean, I once got asked how we have dealt with companies where there's been a failure of the technology. And that's a good question, because we invest in companies where that's probably going to happen. And so it was interesting because it suggested not that the founders were worried that their technology might not work, but they worried that we might be the kind of fund that wouldn't stick with them. And I think that kind of, for us at least, when we're backing these complicated ideas, it's good insight to be checking that you've got patient funds that are going to stick with you over time.
Thanks, Oliver. I'm going to invite Daniel Jameson to speak. Who's raised their
Do you mind
hand.
if I add an answer to that?
Yes, of course. Go ahead, Emmy.
Sorry, I think I've lost some sound there.
Sorry, go ahead, Emmy.
I'm okay to speak. For us, I enjoy it when founders have actually done some research on our angels. We don't have a full list of every one of our angels on our website, but there are a few names there. And I really enjoy it when they come to us and ask for specific areas where they would like help. In other words, they know where their gaps are, they know where they want to enhance their board of advisors or team, and they look for the angels who have those expertise or that background.
Absolutely. So I've got a raised hand from Daniel Jameson. Can the host unmute Daniel Jameson to ask their question, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Daniel.
Is that clear enough? Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So my question is, I guess this was spurred on by my thoughts of the Cambridge Angels and the fact that you most likely make investments to Cambridge-based companies at the moment. Given that we're all in this remote situation at the moment with COVID and lockdowns, what are your expectations for where the companies are located in terms of the investments you're going to make? And how is that process going to look with everyone being remote right now and most of the meetings being done over Zoom and everything else?
It's a really good question. The reality is that our angels networks and their support structures still remain in Cambridge and London primarily. So we're best positioned to help companies that are located there. But you're absolutely right, this world has changed. We're now receiving far more pitches from outside of those regions. We have in fact moved all of our what we call informal pitches to entirely an online format, which has worked really well for us. But because we're investing in early stage, investing in people, the need to get to know the team remains, and whether that be online or in person. So it has expanded our geographical remit, but the reality is the sport networks still exist in Cambridge and London.
Thanks.
Thanks, Daniel. One of the questions I'm seeing recurring in the Q&A is questions around pre-revenue startups. How many of the investors here today are interested in looking at pre-revenue startups?
Yeah, I mean, we as long as, so for us, I wouldn't personally lead a marketplace or a investment that didn't have some kind of commercial traction. But on the deep tech side, you know, more than half of our companies are deep tech companies, and none of them had revenue when we invested in them. So yeah.
Yeah, I can build on that if you like, Josh. So and I'll speak on behalf of my activity, but on some others also in the group. So not everybody in the group decides uniformly. For specifically deep tech, which is my focus, most of the investments are indeed pre-revenue. We do look for other factors. So if you are pre-revenue, it would be very important for us that you have deep defensible IP. So be it deep tech, deep science, or you know, a deep insight that is causing a disruption in business model. We have come in a large portion of our investments so far in pre-revenue stages. Yes.
Yeah, so
sorry, Oliver, go ahead.
For us as a fund, well, certainly the bit of the fund that I manage, which is chiefly life science companies, so that could be healthcare, ag tech, clean tech, none of them have got revenue. So, you know, we could invest in a company that's 10 years before they achieve revenue. In actual fact, some of our portfolio companies never get to the point they've got revenue because they go through a trade sale before that, and that's fine. What we're looking for is that robust IP that protects the company on the route through to an exit.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. And an associated question here from Alistair Pettigrew, but I've seen it repeated several times here, is, you know, how do you calculate the valuation of these businesses? It's very easy once you've got revenue to look at multiples and compare those across different funds. But when you're looking at something that's pre-revenue or purely technology at this point, how do you value those?
So there's two things drive valuation in my experience at the early stage, and it's never ever to do with the amount of revenue. The first thing is the amount being raised. So if you can convince us that you need to raise £5 million, clearly the valuation is not going to be £5 million. It's going to be a bigger number than that. And the other thing is competition. So for any entrepreneur out there, the really key, it's really important to manage your fundraising process such that you maximize the competition. And the best way of doing that is to have as many first meetings as you can in as short a period of time. And that is as you can. And that is why Zoom is amazing, because it means you don't have to spend, you don't have to spend 4 hours a day walking between meetings. You can have, if you've got the energy for it, you can have 10 meetings with investors in a day if you can face that kind of, if you've got the stamina for it. So that would be my advice. Try and have all the first meetings as quickly as you can, and try and then keep the momentum building, and make sure nobody falls behind and nobody gets too far out in front to keep the competition going. The competition is the big thing that drives valuation.
Can I jump in as well on this?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Great. So I fully agree. I think at this stage, what Damien said is absolutely what we see. There's another thing that because this is a very important question. We do engage in really early stages, and valuations are very fluid. So one heuristic that I advise, and we do actually use with some of the startups, especially the ones that we're in a co-lead position in, is to project to Series B and then go backwards, because what you want as a founder is to have substantial uplifts at each stage. So trying to understand where the business could be in a Series B situation, because then you can actually apply these kind of multiples, and then back it to the present day, and see if you can, as a founding team, build up the uplifts in the subsequent stages that would reach Series B in a reasonable way. I don't know if that made sense, but let's say in Series B you expect to have 10 million in revenue. Let's say you apply multiple, so that's a specific valuation. If you plan to have 3 rounds before then, and you want 2x uplifts, that would be a way to triage, to actually say, okay, is the valuation that we're looking at today good, or is it going to place us, is it too overvalued in such a way that it would place us in a bind where we would go sideways or a down round if the numbers are not achievable down the road or down the cycle.
Can I just add from our point of view, the other thing that's important is the option pool. So we have this conversation a lot because we invest in companies that are really early. And what we do is 2 things: evaluation. We look at comparables, and then we talk to founders and we work through the different fundraisers that the company's going to go into in the risk points and what a likely valuation at each point might be. And then we also have an option pool, because ultimately some of our companies, the biotech-based ones, for example, they're going to raise so much money that founder dilution is just fundamentally a bit of a fact of life, and the protection for that is an option pool that's adequate at each phase, and so that the options are awarded to people that are actively working with the company, and that way founders can protect their equity a little bit, and indeed continue to earn equity over time.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. There's another question here that occurs quite a lot, which is around solo founders. I know when I was raising money initially, people were very, very focused on the idea that it was very likely I'd get hit by a bus, and therefore I definitely had to have a founding team around me. And you hear that phrase a lot, and you hear those kind of questions come up at these kind of events. Can you give me a bit of an idea of your opinions on solo founders versus teams, and whether that comes pre-investment, post-investment, and how you look at it?
I'm happy to answer. From our investment point of view, sole founders are not very popular with our group. And Josh, I think it is not so much the bust, but certainly the risk that we're worried about, that if the entire business rests with one person, that does present a risk to investors. So we do generally look for fairly established teams, or at least co-founders.
Yeah, so for us, it's less the risk than an ability to attract really good people. So if you're out there on your own, and there are always exceptions to this. What as an investor you want to see is an ability to hire or attract really great people, and it's very rare. It's very rare that one person has all the skills necessary to lead a company from one person to 10 people or to 20. And just if you as a non-technical founder have found a really great technical founder, and you've managed to persuade them to leave their job at Arm or Google or wherever it is to start this ridiculously risky journey of building a startup, that's a big it's a big sense check from our point of view.
So I would agree. I think the single founder issue is a real issue because it creates these kind of risks. But a couple of things that would ameliorate that: if they have a very clear sense of the talent gaps on the team, and they have an ability to plug those talent gaps, be them around attracting talent, but also around, to be honest. This might sound wrong but I mean it in the most positive light, if they are coachable, right? So if you have a single founder and they're coming into this new, are they good listeners? Would they accept outside perspectives because they don't have any within the team? So these are the two things: the talent gaps and the coachability, so to speak, are things. And I'm not necessarily implying that we would be the coaches, but the idea that they might get mentors or advisors or board members that would be able to help them out on their journey. I just want to point out that 2 of their best performing investments have been single founder startups.
Thanks, Ronnie. I think that leads in quite interestingly to a question I'd like to end on. We've got 5 minutes left of the session. I'd like to each give you the chance to answer Alvin's question, which is around how much involvement do you have with the businesses you invest in? I know that you've each got quite different investment models, but it'd be nice to see from each of you what kind of involvement you expect to have with the business for the first, let's say, 12 months in, and then looking further in at 3 years to 5.
I can answer from a DASA perspective. When someone comes to us, it's generally through the medium of a competition. So they would be competing against potentially non-peer technologies for our funding and support. But if they are successful, we generally partner with them with someone from the science and technology community at places like DSTL or one of the customer communities. And these people will partner them throughout their project lifecycle, giving them access to customers and sponsors, greater insights into the defense and security community. And those relationships become part of a valued network that these people take with them beyond that. The other thing that DASA is trying to grow is an ability to do some of the business mentoring and access to finance, so that once they finish their project with us, it doesn't stop there and go into the valley of death, which is often the case with new innovations. We try and help them to then take it into commercialization, production, and ultimately a sponsor. That's our aspiration going forward.
So I'll tell you about our perspective. So as a fund, because we work with very young companies, we're really hands-on. So that might mean that one of the 3 of us, the 3 directors of the fund, take a board observer position or a director position. We would always have an observer position, but we may not join the board. We might find somebody from industry and put them on the board. And this is a process that's done in collaboration with the founders. And then we're there very much on a Q&A basis. I mean, a large part of my working week is spent dealing with existing investments that might have questions or something happening. I mean, that ranges from some HR type questions to fundraising questions to a BD type question. And the other core thing that we like to do as a fund is that we've got a good network. We're out and about talking to people a lot, and we share that network and introduce to people. I think the most powerful tool that investors have is their ability to meet people that are relevant to other people and share those contacts. And we spend a lot of time doing that as well.
I'm happy to go next. So I guess there's no one size fits all when it comes to working with companies, and the kind of companies that we invest in are relatively I guess deep tech, if you will. I guess like a lot of PhD students or postdocs that have started companies for the first time, sometimes it might be their first job in their career as well. So for companies like these, we actually do quite hands-on. So we typically have 2 or 3 investors from our side working closely with the companies identifying what sort of gaps do they have and how do they meet the next milestone, so to speak, 12 to 18 months from now. Apart from that, we try to have like a bit more touch points outside of your typical board meetings. So we also have our portfolio services team that sort of works closely with our founding team in relatively commercial side of things, which sometimes, because the more deep tech founders sort of lack, if you will. Yeah, so it's a bit of opening of your network, maybe helping on the business commercial side of things, and providing sort of support on the tech or customer side of things.
We've got 1 minute left. With that, I think I'd like to wrap this session up. Thank you, investors, for all of your information you provided today. I'm aware there's a lot of Q&A left. What I'll try and do over the next half an hour or so is just pick up some of those answers, and I'll answer them in the chat itself, so people can get the answers to their questions. Thank you to the investors. You've all provided contact details in your presentations. I believe this presentation will be available after today's event, so feel free to reach out to the people who've piqued your interest. Be interesting. Remember, these guys are receiving hundreds of emails a day with people reaching out about their companies. Do something different. Be short, get to the point, try and grab their attention. Thank you, guys. And we'll have a 10-minute break now and come back for the next 7 investors for another round of presentations and questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the second part of this reverse pitching session. The next set of investors we have here, we have 7 investors to join us this afternoon, are all focused around later stage investments. So these are for people who you've raised a seed, maybe you're ready for a Series A or B, and you're starting to take your business to market and starting to generate customers and really scale up what you've created so far. So I'm not going to muck around. Let's get straight to it. I'd like to invite Amelia Armour from Amadeus to the screen to give a 3-minute presentation on what you can bring to some of the startups here today.
Thanks very much, and thank you very much for inviting me. So Amadeus is one of the longest standing deep tech VC investors in the UK. So we have the next slide, please. So we've been around for 23 years, and in that time we've invested in more than 165 different companies. And we were started in London and Cambridge and still have our active offices in the UK there. But over time, we've expanded overseas, and we now make investments around the world. We have 3 different investment stages. So early stage in the UK, and then we do scale and secondary in Europe, and then also growth investing in emerging markets. But the fund that I work for is early stage in the UK, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Next slide, please. So this is the important bit. So these are the people that you'll be pitching to when you come and meet us, and one of us will be the partner who leads the investment. So Alex, me, Nick and Pierre are the partners who are leading the investments from our fund. And Anne and Herman were the founders of Amadeus, and they're both still very active and sit on our investment committee. But it's this in team which is really important for our entrepreneurs, because we work very closely together. So if you need help with fundraising, or if you need help with recruiting your next salesperson, then as well as your sponsor within the team, you can get access to all of us for help. And it's that our investee companies really value. We've all been at Amadeus for a number of years and have worked with numerous startup companies and Series A and onwards companies. So we're used to dealing with the issues that come up throughout the lifetime of an investment. And so next slide, please. So we're currently investing from the Amadeus 5 Technology Fund, and we're looking for seed and Series A investments in deep tech companies who have a B2B offering. So Series A for us is when you have about 1 million of revenue. We tend not to come in as our first investment after the Series A, but what we do is we support you through all of your investment rounds to exit if you're performing well. And then these are the areas that we're focused on within our fund. So we're generally targeting software companies, and the names along the bottom are the ones that we have currently invested from this fund. So AI and machine learning is a big space for us, and we're looking for applied machine learning companies as well as platform ones. Sprout AI is a good example. It's an insurtech company. And then we have autonomous systems, enterprise software and cybersecurity, digital health, medtech, and then finally a category of novel materials and quantum technologies. And what we're really looking for when we're searching for new investments is we're targeting 3 particular things. We want to see a great team, we want to see a really disruptive technology, and we want to see the opportunity that you could build a company that could be worth $1 billion. So there are lots of companies that are going to be great, but not all of them are suitable for venture capital funding. And it's that huge market opportunity that we're really focused on. So I'm afraid we do turn down a lot of our investments that we see. We probably invest about 3% of the companies that we meet each year. But the ones that we do back have those 3 criteria and have the ability to sell in an international market. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amelia. And I'll remind everybody who's here today to watch and enjoy all these presentations that we will be hosting a Q&A at the end of the next further 6 presentations from investors. So if you'd like to start submitting questions, you can do at the bottom right of your screen. There's a Q&A. And similarly, when we get to that part of the presentations to do a Q&A, if you click on participants, you can raise your hand and ask your questions directly. So Moving on to our second later stage investor, Cameron Gammon from Funderbeam. Please go ahead.
Cheers, Josh. Yeah, I'm Cam. I'm the UK lead here at Funderbeam, and thanks to the Royal Academy for having me. Now, I should point out at the start that we are not directly late stage investors. However, we do facilitate the access to liquidity for late stage companies and their shareholders. So I want to paint a picture for all you founders out there. Next slide, please. So you've scaled your business, you've got through your Series A, Series B, maybe Series C. And now you're worth a couple of mil on paper. Now that is great. But you've got all your wealth tied up in founder shares, and you might not have enough cash to put a deposit down on a new house or repair an old car, whatever it may be. Now imagine if there was a single location that could help you do your next primary fundraising round, communicate with shareholders, facilitate a shareholder vote, sign documentation, and have a marketplace that enables you, your employees, and your shareholders to trade shares and diversify your assets. And that's where Funderbeam comes in. So next slide, please. We're a global marketplace that enables companies to raise capital from investors across the globe. We syndicate all this investment into a single nominee that occupies a single space in your cap table and enables you, the founder, to deal with all your investor relations in one single space. You can kind of think of us like a Seedrs or a Crowdcube, but on a global scale. Then on the other side, we operate a secondary marketplace that opens up an access to liquidity, non-like exchanges such as the NASDAQ and the London Stock Exchange. We allowed shareholder tradability. Some of you might find it easier to imagine it like this. Next slide. Imagine AngelList, NASDAQ, and Bloomberg had a baby. We have the primary market syndicating early stage deals, VC top-ups, even doing bond structures at a much earlier stage. And we've done some future fund convertibles. However, what sets us apart is the exchange, the ability to list a portion of your company's cap table on a marketplace without having to go public, which is often time consuming and expensive. With the amount of growth capital available to late stage companies, we kind of encourage you to stay private, but allow tradability. So what does this mean for you as a founder? Well, you can continue running the company as you see fit without a pressure to exit, as your shareholders will be able to trade their shares as and when they need to. This gets rid of the issue of conflict between your early shareholders who may want to exit and your VC shareholders who may want to scale to unicorn status and make those supernormal returns. I'm sure we'll hear a lot about those today. It also means you and your employees can make partial exits to gain some financial stability. All the while, we collect valuable market data. So where are we now? Next slide, please. Well, we service 16,000 investors from 132 different countries. We've helped raise 26 mil for 54 companies. You can see all the information on there on the right. We are open 24/7, 365 across the globe. So to conclude, there comes a time in every founder, shareholder, employee's life where cash is preferable to equity, especially during these difficult economic times. So if you're looking to fundraise or looking to open up access to liquidity for employees, shareholders, yourselves, then get in contact. And before I go, my one piece of advice to the founder was going to be what Josh said, which is stand out and be original. But Josh covered that. So I will say be honest. Accepting an investment is like starting a relationship. So be honest from the start, because you won't be able to pull the wool over these guys' eyes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Cam. Next up, we have George Mills from the Business Growth Fund. George, go ahead.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, everybody. So my name's George Mills. I'm here from BGF, which is the Business Growth Fund. I'm based in our London team, and I focus on technology companies, and for us, what we think of as relatively early stage. But I'm in the late stage category here, so I'm going to give you sort of 3 points to remember us by, and hopefully tie them to our name. So B is for big. We're a £2.5 billion fund. We've made over 300 investments, and we've got 16 offices across the UK, which makes us the most active investor in small companies in the UK. And we've only been going for 9 years. So it's sort of really fast-paced growth. And what that gives us is an ability to provide in-house support for hiring senior executive roles and non-executive roles that you wouldn't get with a smaller fund. The G in BGF is for growth. So we're really about investing in growth stage companies. So the technology is already proven, you've got products out to the market and you're ready to scale. And normally that means companies generating 5 million of revenue already, something of that order. And in some exceptional cases, we go earlier, but it tends to be companies which are already out there. And the F is a bit of a trick because it stands for fund in the name, but we're not a fund. So we're a balance sheet investor, which means that we don't have a time limit on when we need to return capital. And one of the things that and people have said this already, you need to be aligned with your investors when you go into a new investment. And one of the biggest points of potential misalignment is if they need to sell their stake in your company before you're ready to, because they have to return money to their shareholders. We just don't have that problem because we're set up as a balance sheet. So that's probably it. We are typically investing in Series B rounds and beyond, normally £2 to £10 million. And I think I'm out of time. So that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, George. Next up, I'd like to Usma Chowdhury from Octopus to come and present.
There we go. Spoke too soon. Afternoon all, I'm Usma. I'm one of the 28 investment professionals at Octopus Ventures. You may know us for having exited to tech giants like Microsoft, Twitter and Amazon, but what we're really keen on are exceptionally talented and pioneering entrepreneurs who are looking to solve some of the big global challenges facing human civilization over the next 10 years. Our team is split into 5 sub-teams with their own areas of expertise and investment interest. These include a team looking at consumer businesses, a growth team looking at Series B plus investments, a fintech insurtech team, and then more of relevance for today's audience is a health team that looks at everything across digital health and well-being to biotech and life sciences. And lastly, a deep tech team, which looks at frontier technology that will drive the next industrial revolution. My experience straddles deep tech and health, and I've looked at businesses right across from novel materials and semiconductors to quantum computing, as well as synthetic biology, brain-computer interfaces, and novel biomanufacturing platforms. Our sweet spot is seed and Series A, and we also do some Series B. At seed, we typically come in with a 1 to 2 million check, and at Series A, we typically do 3 to 7 million check, and we can write checks of up to 10 million in size at a single time. And as bio background, like many of you, I'm an academic and have a PhD in biophysics and synthetic biology. And I also worked with the Tech Transfer Office during my PhD and became really well acquainted with some of the big issues of taking R&D heavy businesses out of academia and university labs and scaling them commercially, which is quite relevant with our deep tech and health businesses, given all of them start their journey in a lab somewhere. And in terms of, I guess, our team, we have about 3 academics who understand and love science and R&D heavy businesses and the challenges that come along with those businesses. We often spend a lot of our time reading academic papers, geeking out, and spending our time at innovation hubs with places like UnitDX and Babraham, to name a couple. We have a bunch of resources to help our companies scale their teams and operations and expand internationally when the time is right. This includes a 3-member talent team that help company hire talent and scale, as well as a bench of venture partners who have operating experience. We have a bunch of resources on these which have been published on our website. Please do check out.
Brilliant. Thanks, Usma. Up next, we have Avantika Gupta from Newable.
Thanks, Josh. Newable Ventures Limited is an EIS evergreen fund. We invest in EIS eligible technology-led businesses with generally a focus on the 4th industrial revolution. Next slide, please. And by that, I mean technologies that are generally cross-functional in this very nice looking Venn diagram, especially cutting across the cyber and physical worlds. And perhaps some examples of those enabling technologies that have recently come of age would be machine learning and AI, 3D printing, IoT and automation, etc. Next slide, please. So we generally tend to look for founders who are desperately passionate to change the world and to change the way things are traditionally done. We tend to invest in IP-rich companies where the defensibility is clear, either via a formal protection strategy like a patent, or an informal strategy because of the depth of expertise and the world-leading research that's gone into it. We're slightly earlier than some of the other presenters in this slot. We tend to do pre-Series A, and primarily that's to cover off companies that have done most of their technology development. Maybe they're at MVP and some early proof of concept studies, but they're really looking for a boost to drive commercial traction forward. And in that, we do hardware and software products. We're agnostic either way. Ideally, we'd like a route to market that's been identified and some market segmentation work that's already been done, but we completely understand that that's part of that proof of concept, early commercial traction journey that we're happy to take with our entrepreneurs. And our fund generally does 150K to 200K in 7 to 8 companies per year. But in addition to our fund, we've also got an extensive angel network who will often invest alongside us as a fund, but also in some cases, they invest in companies that are too early for us. And for that purpose, we host a number of company pitching events every year for our angels, where we present companies that we think could be suitable for the fund one day, but they might be one stage too early for us. Next slide. I'd just like to take 30 seconds to tell you about the Newable wider group. And Newable has been around in some guise for the last 38 years, and it provides broader services to SMEs throughout the UK. The services fall into 3 broad categories: space in the form of flexible office space, advice through grant writing, and access to internationalization and export advice through the Department of International Trade, and finance via our microfinance lending arm and our equities business. So when Newable Ventures invests in a business, we try to make sure our investees have access to all of those groups of services so that they have the additional support to move forward and grow. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Avantika. Up next, we have Fergus Dunn from Q Ventures.
Hi there, Josh. Can you hear me all right there?
Loud and clear. Thanks, Fergus.
Great, thank you. So my name is Fergus Dunn. I'm from Q Ventures, and we're a London-based private network of venture capital investors. Next slide, please. So our core network is broken down and is made up of 1,100 members. These are broken down into family offices, which we have over 150. These provide the core of our network and are really the most interesting aspect of our network. They're typically investing tickets of 100,000, well into the millions. And then we have a large portion of fund managers that use us as a curated port of origination, and a large number of high net worths and ultra high net worths that are looking to deploy into venture. They come from around the world, 27 countries to be exact, and they're looking to get exposure into the UK and European venture scene, and they use us as that curated port to do so. So we look to support 15 to 20 companies a year, and we do that by doing our due diligence in-house, and those 15 to 20 companies we choose to work with, we'll support them in securing the rest of their round. So what does it look like when companies come to Q Ventures? Well, we do our due diligence. Once we decide to work with a company, then we'll have a dedicated team working to help secure their funding round by approaching the relevant investors within our network. We have those close relationships and manage those relationships with our investors. And so they know when we pick up the phone and give them a call, that investment is worth their time to look at. They also get support in putting together a fundraising strategy. So often the companies who come to us have one idea of what their funding round might look like, and we will give guidance within that process. Next slide, please. So we are sector agnostic, and this slide demonstrates that. to point out a few. PodPoint, electric charge point company, recently exited to EDF Energy and the likes of Coconut FinTech, and also LiveSmart, which is a B2B white label health tech company. We've worked with over 90 companies in supporting them in raising funding for those companies. Next slide, please. And really, this is the core of what we're looking for. We leave it really broad and open, because that's what our investors are looking for. And so typically the sweet spot is companies raising 2 million and up, right through to Series B in the space of raising 20 million. We like companies to be revenue generating and to have shown traction. Or sometimes that is very early stage, depends on the sector those companies are operating in. And again, we're sector agnostic. When we're evaluating companies for Key Ventures, we really are looking for a solid team in place. That's the same factor that we come back to every time, and our investors come back to every time. If it's a quality team in place, they will adapt to the market. So really, team and traction are the 2 points that we look for there. Next slide, please. So if you do have any questions, or you'd like to get in touch about a funding round you're currently working on, and please do reach out to me at Fergus at Key Ventures, or go through our website, and you'll be able to apply for funding through there, and we'll look to get back to everyone. We try to do it within 48 hours. Sometimes that can be challenging. And those 15 to 20 companies we choose to work with, we do a good job in providing smart capital for those companies. Thank you, Josh.
Brilliant. Thanks, Fergus. And last but not least for this afternoon session, Robert Whitby-Smith is presenting here from Albion VC.
Josh, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. That's
perfect. So firstly, thank you, Josh and the Royal Academy of Engineering for inviting me to pitch briefly to everyone. My name's Robert. I'm a partner in Albion VC, and we've got 2 pots of money, and I'll speak very briefly about both of them, just so you know what they do. One is the UCL Technology Fund, which we co-manage with UCL Business. So that's only relevant if your business has got IP linked to UCL. But if it has, then we've just raised our second fund of 40 million and looking for investment opportunities there. And about 2/3 of that goes into life sciences, and 1/3 into physical sciences. And that's off the back of Fund 1, which is about 4 years old now. It's had 3 NASDAQ floats and 1 sale to Facebook. So it's brilliant IP coming out of UCL, as anyone who goes to UCL will know. Then we've got the Venture Capital Trust, and we manage approximately, in round numbers, 500 million. They're all evergreen funds, so patient capital. And we typically invest there. Our North Star is B2B software at Series A, which I think, as others have referred to, typically means, in broad brush, about 1 million revenue in terms of commercial traction. We will stretch, but so typically we were writing an initial first check of around 5 million, and the range is probably 500,000 to 10 million. We've got about 35 technology companies in our portfolio at the moment, or software companies in our portfolio. We're deeper in some sectors than others, as you'll find with most investors. We're particularly deep in digital health. I think we're probably one of the most active digital health investors in Series A. We're deep in fintech and cyber, for some companies that people may or may not have heard of. Quantexa just raised its Series C at $65 million. Egress just raised its Series B at $50 million. Quantexa is solving financial crime within the banks. Egress is encryption software, next generation encryption software. And then deep tech, which is probably the most relevant for this call. So I've been involved in, just to give a few examples, put a bit of color to it, with a company called Grapeshot, which came out of Cambridge University, Cambridge IP, and was sold last year to Oracle. And that was a business providing contextual feed into programmatic trading of advertising. So very clever, deep tech behind that. PSE was a company that came out of Imperial College. The founder and current CEO is a professor from chemical engineering, and he built that business up to over 20 million revenue. It was acquired by Siemens recently. And then a company called Perpetrum, where the chairman is a fellow of the Royal Academy, and they're in the rail space, providing condition monitoring, clever condition monitoring to the rail sector. And that was recently acquired by Hitachi, just to give you a flavour of what we get up to. In terms of tips, I won't bombard because I am 13th in the list. I would say build your long-term relationships with your investors as early as you can. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Robert. So we have some time now for Q&A. There's two ways to submit your questions. The first way is down on the bottom right of your screen. There's a Q&A button, and you can submit your questions in writing. The second way is to open the participants button, which is on the left there at the bottom of your screen, and raise your hand. And I'm told that with some magic, we can give you access to present your questions live to the investors. Whilst we give people a chance to submit those questions, I thought I'd ask one. We, as RPD, work with a lot of hardware startups who are kind of at that stage where they're launching their first batch of products. We're producing, let's say, 10,000 units for them. And they're repeatedly coming to us at the moment saying, well, we're stuck in quite a harsh funding environment. We're looking at usually Series A, maybe Series B. And a lot of people are citing that. But from my side of the table, I'm seeing a lot of deals being done and people being still quite active. I just thought I'd ask the room, what are your opinions on this year and the probably quite tough economic years to come, and how does that affect your investments in terms of writing checks, let's say?
Yeah, Josh, do you want me to answer first? Is that all right?
Please.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting year for us, and we were concerned what was going to happen when we first went into lockdown with term sheets that we have had out for our companies, whether they would still close. But fortunately, they all did, and we've seen that our pace of investment has stayed the same this year. So we've done as many investments in this period of time that we did last year, and that's been with new and existing companies in our portfolio. And we've done investments without meeting the team in person, so we've done it all virtually. So yeah, we sort of move quite seamlessly into this different world.
Yeah, I think that's critical, and that surprised me and a lot of people actually, the ability to sign quite large deals, whether that's investment or sales, without ever meeting people. Gone are the days of the 24-hour trip around the world. I think this has actually proved that we can do quite a lot without leaving our bedrooms. Cam, how is this world, or the world that we see about to land on us for the next few years, going to affect the way that you guys get involved with deals?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think from our perspective in terms of our secondary market, which I think is unique to us, I think we're seeing more and more people fraying away from the IPO, seeing as they can access capital so easily and at such large amounts, especially from America. So we're kind of seeing more and more people wanting another option for their shareholders to get that access to liquidity, or even their employees. The amount of conversation I've had with founders who've been maybe pushed towards the exit, the public, going public and IPOing, actually going, well, I want to continue running my company in private where I don't have to do such the quarterly updates and all the regulation that comes with going public. So having an opportunity to stay private, I think we're going to see a trend going in the future where more people will just stay private for longer, because why not?
I think that makes a lot of sense. I've got a question here from Aurelian, which is for you investors that primarily focus on Series A and B. Is there anything that would attract you to a business that's I guess, less advanced than your target market? What are those businesses that stand out and you go, actually, I want to be in here at seed, regardless of what I'm supposed to be focusing on?
I suppose we're all, Josh, shall I have a go?
Please go ahead.
Yep. So I think we're all looking for similar things, which is around team differentiation. We all want a market opportunity. Some of us will be wanting bigger opportunities than others in terms of, are we $1 billion exit hunters or not? But we'll all be looking around team and differentiation. So a team that's done it before might be one way to differentiate, or a team that's got really exciting deep moat around its business from IP, going into really exciting opportunity would be a reason why we would go in at seed.
Josh, if I may, I don't know if you can hear me. I just say, so BGF is probably one of the later stage investors around the table. And one of the things that I find is we're still presenting to the same investment committee. So they will look at that in terms of the other things they look at. So if I wanted to do an earlier stage investment, I think it's really important to show, even if there isn't as much revenue or commercial traction as we'd normally see, having a really clear grasp of routes to markets and having a sort of well-tested view of how you'd get to that next stage adds a lot in those conversations. And obviously that comes with a great team and a big opportunity.
Absolutely. Okay. Tom asks quite an interesting question around heavily regulated environments. You know, a lot of you have mentioned deep tech. Some of you have talked about medical devices and even defense and areas where you do have heavy regulation. Tom asks, you know, how does that affect your investment? Do you have any tips for people facing long regulatory processes? It's something that we work with a lot with medical devices, and one of the things that we've managed to identify as a very key way to reduce the timelines that you might see of 2 to 3 years to get through regulatory and compliance environments is actually identifying what is new and what is novel. I think too many people try and go through regulatory compliance for things that already exist. You know, you have 510Ks, and most people don't take advantage of filing 510Ks, which is an opportunity to basically build on existing approved technology in the medical sector for the FDA. I think quite often people forget to actually identify what is new, and in often cases there isn't a lot of regulatory compliance required because a lot of it exists out there. Are there any specific tips from the investors here today that around meeting regulatory compliance and how you might shorten those timelines, or how you look at them as an investor?
So Josh, if you don't mind, I can have a quick chance at this one. Newable doesn't tend to do a lot of medical device for that reason, because we are quite a small investor in the bigger picture of things, and we're not sure we can keep up with the funding requirements of companies in this space. But I have a background in life science, and I think one of the key things for me is starting with that regulatory hat very, very early, so that you can identify what is truly novel and identify where you should be doing your GMP, good manufacturing practice, and your good lab practices all up front, so that you limit the time of reiteration and lost time almost when you're going through that regulatory process, and the number of mistakes you make.
Can I add here?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I guess picking up on Avantika's point on, you know, life sciences and more biotech, and in some of these frontier tech businesses, such as we've been looking at a bunch of CRISPR-Cas based gene editing businesses or microbiome editing businesses, there's a lot of, you know, I guess for the regulators to pave the way. And so typically the early stage startups in these areas, the first startups that come in these areas and innovate in these spaces, often help and have to work quite closely with the regulators on building a regulatory framework that can then be applied across the field. So that is a, you know, sort of regulatory risk that you do take when you get into some of these frontier tech businesses who are sort of, you know, going into new areas and areas where there isn't an existing regulatory framework in place. So I think most investors who would be investing in those areas would understand that a lot of the first wave of these startups in these areas will be helping pave the regulatory sort of framework for that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of investors have also got various packages, as you say, that they can provide to help you do these programs. I know that we, although we don't do much investing, we provide a prototyping equipment that's pre-certified to allow people to take, you know, what they developed in a lab straight into clinical trial rather than redeveloping things under 13485. So I think if you talk to the VCs, and a lot of them that are used to working in regulatory environments do have a lot of equipment that allows you to move a bit quicker, templating and other resources that may get you faster there. And this is part of the value that the VCs can offer as part of an investment. Alvin asks an interesting COVID-related question. How many of you are considering where social distancing that is likely to be around for a considerable amount of time now might affect a business's ability to operate when they're making investments, such as, you know, people that might have facilities that need people to be working closely together, particularly places that might own their own manufacturing or be involved in production line or close, close working environments.
you want me to take a quick stab at this one? So, so we've got our software companies. It's been fine. Obviously, they can work from home. We have other lab-based companies, and actually they have been able to come into the labs in a socially distanced way. So the ones that have really struggled is when they're attached to university facilities and where the university has just had a shutdown and they haven't been able to get into the facilities. And there what we've seen is people adapting very quickly by moving into their own office space. So it's forced them to move into their lab their own lab much more quickly, so that they can then have control and get their staff back working again. But I think longer term, it's a good question to ask, and how people will manage that if you can't get all of your team in, and how will you meet your various milestones with maybe people working on shifts, etc., not being in the lab at all of the times.
So you're certainly not counting out investing in businesses that may be affected by social distancing. It's more about how people are able to plan through them and show some resilience.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, you know, entrepreneurs, they're so quick and innovative that they've adapted very, very quickly. So most people are so motivated to get to the next milestone that they quickly work out a solution.
And so for Series A businesses, how do you all look at people who are outsourcing versus building infrastructure internally? For a lot of businesses, you know, especially in hardware that we see, you know, really it's a sales business. They create some IP and then they need to focus on sales. How do you see businesses that are outsourcing the, I guess, detailed development and manufacturing versus setting up their own production lines and owning assets and operations? I mean, does it even consider an opinion? You know, when you're investing in these businesses, do you care whether they own the executional side of their business if they're focused on the sales side, which is obviously driving the top line figures?
We do have one company where they pretty much outsourced all of the development, but obviously the IP is owned by the company, and so that was the important bit for us, is where did the IP sit? And I think they had a rather odd moment where there were more board members than employees, because they were outsourcing all of the work. So it certainly does happen. It's quite unusual actually that you get 100% outsourced development. But yeah, it's not something that we look negatively at, you know, unless it's going to affect the value in some way longer term. But if the IP is owned by the company, then the value should be within the company.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's something, I mean, Robert, maybe you've seen it at UCL as well. We're seeing a lot of university teams coming out with 10, 20 pieces of IP and building these sort of outsourced execution machines to try and churn out, not necessarily spin-offs, but a machine for various spin-offs in one. Is that sort of thing that you're seeing as a trend that you get behind, in, especially in medical devices, where that's now so much more accessible than it was 10, 20 years ago?
Yes.
Sorry, Robert, I think we've lost your mic.
Oh yeah, am I back?
There you are.
Apologies, sorry about that. So yeah, I mean, the core competency of those spin-outs is the IP they've created and the team around that. As you say, they then add execution on the commercial side, but whether it's outsourced or insourced is not, you know, not a factor in an investment decision. It affects the amount of capital they'll need to raise, and therefore I guess you'd appraise the credibility that they've been able to do that, but otherwise it's not a factor. As Amelia said, it's about the IP.
Do you guys ever see complications in terms of university owning part of the IP? And are there any quarrels ever between founders and the university itself?
Yeah, it's always a big debate.
No
at the
comment,
beginning.
that face says.
Yeah, when you've got to do the transfer, you know, when you do the tech transfer and the license of the IP, that can take a long time. And usually that's sorted before we come in as an investor. They've worked that out. And, you know, that's something that founders should be really aware of, because it's different across universities. It's not standard. And I would definitely take advice if you feel that the university is, you know, taking too much of your business.
Yeah, I think echoing Amelia there is such a range across the different universities, all the way from, you know, just 30% to something like 50% of the company and, you know, still being licensed in rather than assigned over. So I think it's quite important, especially for, I guess, the more academic teams or scientific teams spinning these out, understanding a bit more on their IP implications and the IP licensing deals that they have in place with the university, and understanding and drafting a clear sort of like IP policy where they know what will trigger an assignment and what that entails. So often see that a lot with R&D heavy businesses.
Brilliant. So we're coming up to the end of the session. All of the slides in the booklet will be available from tomorrow to all the participants. And in there, I think most people have left their contact details. Now, one of the things that I think we're all aware of is you all receive tens, maybe hundreds of emails a day with pitch decks, things to look at, people trying to grab your attention. It's been to do with so many things coming through your inbox. So I'd like to hear from each of you. What is it that stands out? What's the best email you've ever received? What's the best pitch you've had that really grabbed your attention? What should we be trying to do to...
So if I can jump in and kick it off, Josh, one thing that's really important is to make sure that the relevant information is within the documentation that's being shared from the offset. I think very often the first calls or the first interaction can be covering a lot of the basic information which should or could be covered within the first email, the pitch deck, for example. And so you can find a lot of our time is spent actually finding basic information which could be provided up front. We find that our time is best spent if we can engage on a deeper level and find out more about the company in depth from the offset, and instead of spending a lot of that time covering the basics. So it's making sure that you're covering the right metrics and make sure you have the information to hand from the offset for us.
If I could jump in next, Josh, I think mine is a slightly practical way, maybe for my mind, to think about new tech, and also reflecting on the Renewable Ventures team, which is very small. There's only 3 of us in the team, and we're not masters of all technology by any means, but we love a demo. So if it's possible to do a software demo, even over Zoom, or film a demo of a hardware and then show it to us while we're on Zoom, because clearly we can't all meet in person at the moment. Even some diagrammatic demos to just really break it down really simply, because we all have some specialty, but we don't really understand all the tech start to finish in the first pitch. So breaking it down and making it really digestible is something I'd love to see more often.
Yeah, and I'd add to that I love receiving videos. It's really slow for me to read anything. So if you send me a video, I understand it in 3 minutes. It's really good. So videos are really powerful.
I'd say prior to COVID times, my advice was always, in my past life in angel investment in Cambridge, was always be ready and willing to pitch to everyone and anyone at any point. So I'm an NED for an agri-tech company up in Scotland, and he got some of his first seed investment pitching to a guy sat next to him on the plane up to Edinburgh. And a bit like you with Josh, be ready to pitch in Spain, wherever. Be open, be friendly, be transparent, and just find some common ground between you, and pitch, be human. We're all ready and willing to listen, I suppose.
I'd add to that by saying with the later stage investors, there's probably a shorter list of relevant investors to go after. So think really carefully about who you want to speak to. And investors get so many emails the whole time. One really effective tactic is to get multiple intros to the same investor all around the same time. So often you get sort of 2 or 3 things over the course of a couple of days. You think this person is making a real effort to talk here, and you prioritize it, and that's very effective.
Josh, shall I go next?
Yes, please.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah. So I'll build on what George said. I think much better than a cold email would be finding someone through your network that you can get a warm introduction to the individual. Because if a key skill for an entrepreneur is to be able to network and to be able to hustle, and you must be able to find a way. And if you can't, then of course resort to the cold email, but much better if you can speak to someone who knows the fund.
There you have it. Key to all of their hearts. Go ahead. You'll have all those contact details in the booklet and the slides as of tomorrow. I'd like to thank all of our panelists from this session and the session before, and all of the 100 or so guests that have joined us this afternoon for this session. If there's any further questions you'd like to put to the teams, you'll have their email addresses, or feel free to contact the Academy. And it'd be great to see you again next year, and over the next few events that the Academy will be holding digitally for the time now. But with no commute to go, let's go and enjoy the rain and have a good evening. Thanks, everyone.